Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Moody Gooners podcast, with the unofficial Arsenal FC podcast that looks to give Gooners insightful and lively content with a twist. My name is Jason, and with me, as always, is Paul. And today we're going to be dissecting our Arsenal's somewhat, how do I say this nicely, bit of a letdown 2-2 draw with West Ham that happened on Sunday. So, Paul, how you feeling, man? After that debacle?
Yeah, it was pretty grim. I think a lot of parallels are being drawn with the Liverpool game in this one, but I think at the very least with the Liverpool game, you can kind of square away the fact that it was, at Anfield, whereas this one, I would still say that was 2 points dropped, but I think people took comfort from the fact that other rivals had lost generally against Liverpool this season, whereas West Ham away, fighting for their lives at the bottom, not a particularly good side. I think, this is great. This is probably one of the few times this season where I thought, that was abject, basically. So
yeah. I mean, I feel exactly the same with the Liverpool game. I thought we got away with it a bit, and it wasn't so much 2 points dropped. But with this game, definitely we dropped 2 points. The game was there for the taking. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of it all, how were you feeling before the game? Were you confident, optimistic? What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was, to be honest. I mean, I sort of looked at this game and the Southampton game as almost tuning up for the City game. And I mean, obviously the players won't be hopefully looking far ahead, but I very much saw it as, we've got to get 6 points in the bag before we play City.
Yeah.
Two very winnable games where we could maybe chew into the goal difference a little bit, and also get the confidence going again after the Liverpool game, and then it would probably make the Liverpool game look like maybe even a point gained, because we would have potentially had 6 going in. And plus, West Ham, they've got, I've looked at the numbers and they're 10th in the league in terms of goals conceded, so they're pretty miserly, but they're something like 17th or 18th in the league in terms of scoring. So I just felt as long as we get the first goal and get it fairly early, I felt there was a game there to win for us. And I was feeling. I mean, I'm normally a bit sort of on the fence before I go into games, but I would say that I was pretty confident all up, to be honest. I just wanted us to kind of like build that momentum up before the City game, get the points difference as well back up, so that we could at least go in with some kind of psychological boost. Really, how are you feeling?
Well, I was optimistic. I was predicting a comfortable sort of 3-1 win. I thought we would do it. I thought we'd get it over the line. And it's the old cliche: the points on the board are better than games in hand, and it puts the pressure back on City, because the way the fixtures are sort of laid out, it was going to be that City were going to have 2 games in hand by the time we played them at the Etihad. So it would have really, really put the pressure back on them. But we'll get into it now. I mean, the lineup. What did you think, first of all, about the lineup? Any thoughts on that? I mean, Nketiah was back on the bench, Saliba still out, and then Zinchenko, which we didn't know until sort of just before the game was out, and then Tierney obviously come in to replace him. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I made a bit of a boo-boo a couple of weeks ago when I was referencing Arteta saying that there was a player that was imminently coming back, and I thought, well, if it's not El Neni and Tomiyasu, then maybe Saliba's coming in. But then I totally forgot about Nketiah, and it was great to see him on the bench. I mean, I think I'm not sure how much of an impact player he's off the bench, to be honest. Rather, I think he's probably better as a starter when he's getting a bit more momentum in. But obviously, the more strength you can have on the bench, the better. Yeah. And I think looking at the lineup, I had no idea that Zinchenko had a tight groin. So for me, when I first saw it, I was a bit like, oh no. And then I looked on the bench, I was could see Zinchenko not there, and I was like, not another bloody injury. But everyone's kind of saying that it's he's likely to be back on Saturday. But then I think outside of the left back position, I was actually again, it's one of those situations where you can pretty much pick the team from who's available. Obviously, Saliba's still missing, so Holding, no surprises to see him in there. And then I even squared the Tierney for Zinchenko thing in my mind, thinking, well, Jared Bowen's quite a dangerous player for them, and the one thing Tierney does offer is defensive solidity. So I felt that with the players we had available, it did sort of pick itself, and I wasn't overly worried I think Tierney should, in theory, be good enough to come in for games here and there, even though obviously he's not quite at the level of Zinchenko in terms of building the play and technical security and sort of end product in the final third. I thought he would still be pretty serviceable deputy for a game against a team, in sort of 17th position in the league as he was. So yeah, again, I think we've had a fairly consistent selection this season, bar a couple of players. So I was, still, it didn't really affect my sort of confidence when I saw that. I was obviously would love to have seen Zinchenko in, but it certainly didn't impact my thoughts before that suddenly, we were going to be in danger. I just thought maybe we might be able to, nullify West Ham's only really, really consistent attacking threat. And then, as long as we could sort of do other bits and pieces with our, in terms of building play and created chances at the other end, I still felt pretty good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I felt the same. I thought Tierney would come in and offer that sort of defensive cover because Zinchenko can sometimes get caught out with his sort of movement and coming into the sort of centre, whereas Tierney is your more sort of traditional fullback. I mean, it was interesting to see. Well, I thought it was going to be interesting to see how Tierney played, whether he stuck to the sort of left side or whether he sort of tried to tuck in and offer that extra man like Zinchenko does. But I didn't think that they would offer any sort of threat, really. As you say, their goal scoring exploits aren't really something to shout about. I mean, I did think, looking at West Ham's lineup, that they did pick probably the best 11 that they had available to them, which, considering they had a game in Europe, I think just a few days before, I think it was like Thursday, I think it was, they played. The Ghent, wasn't it? I think it was away. Yeah. So I think, I was a bit surprised they put everything in, but then I guess that they're in a relegation battle themselves, so that for them it's every point matters. So I mean, lineup picks itself really at the end of the day. So I think we're too far down the season now to start playing around and rotating. We just need to get the points on the board, really. So I was fine with that. So just sort of diving in, first half. I mean, I don't think I've seen a better first 10 minutes from us. The opening 10 minutes were just blistering. We were utterly dominant, played with so much authority. There was a bit of a swagger about us, and I was captivated. It was just incredible to see. And I thought, here we go. We're going to start tucking into the goal difference here with this. But obviously, it wasn't.
You were very much all about 6-0, weren't you? I think that was your prediction after 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was like, we're going to get 5, 6, 7 here. We're going to really hit the goal difference up here. What were your thoughts when we sort of kicked off, getting into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think West Ham. I think we did. Again, we sort of owned the ball, dominated that aspect of it, and I think West Ham sort of didn't really know how to live with us. To be honest, they sort of retreated. They were a little bit at 6s and 7s, and the main theme for me that I've noticed in the last few years is we're not creating as many clear-cut opportunities as we should. But the great thing about it is obviously, when you create 2 chances and you score 2 goals, there's a ruthlessness about that, I think. And really, West Ham, I've never seen the London Stadium so quiet. I've never seen West Ham like that in a London derby. Even it was it was almost too easy. It was almost. You see those sort of offers you get sometimes into your inbox and your email, and you think, "Oh, that sounds like a good offer," and it was almost too good to be true. It felt like one of those, like we just literally played in sort of 4th gear, still kind of on it, but it felt so easy to kind of have the ball and have the ball in sort of dangerous areas, and then obviously 2 chances, 2 goals. I mean, it was, and then actually Arsenal have not really shown a propensity to drop points from 2-0 up until the last 2 games, ironically.
Exactly.
So when you're looking at how good we've been sort of away from home this season in terms of our defence, particularly, and you think West Ham pretty abject in terms of goal scoring, you're thinking, well, I think if we were playing City and we were 2-0, different story. But when you're playing against a team that traditionally doesn't really carve out a lot of chances, I mean, I'm kind of kicking myself now for getting ahead of myself, but you do kind of think, well, these guys can't score. We're 2-0 up. The crowd are quiet. The players are like rabbits caught in the headlights, and this has got to be 3 points. I mean, it's just absolutely got to be. So to wind the clock forward an hour and a half and to be where we ended up actually just blew my mind, really. I know we're going to get onto that, but yeah, incredible. It was an incredible outcome, I think. Given how the game started, I think both teams had maybe had a shot on target, 2 shots on target each fairly on, but we obviously, we had that sort of extra bit of quality around the box to kind of unlock the door, and then that clinical side to actually get put it in the net. And I think when you score early against a team fighting relegation, it just calms the nerves. I felt as long as we got an early goal, we'd win the game actually fairly comfortably, to be honest, at least by 2 clear goals by the end. But yeah.
So looking at the goals, first goal, I mean, obviously Gabriel Jesus, I mean, from my perspective, I just thought it was brilliant sort of build-up play, intricate little passing, one touch, I love the little ball from Partey that just sort of, he opened his body and pushed it back in to then create that space, and then that through ball, with I think it was Ben White with the assist across from sort of the byline, and then Jesus at the back. It was so slick and it was just free flowing. It was beautiful to watch.
It was almost easy, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
We made it look easier than probably what it was, because there wasn't a whole heap of space. That West Ham had retreated a lot into big time into the 18-yard box, and Partey's doing this thing at the moment where everyone thinks he's going to shoot, and he stops and he drags the ball and he kind of commits the defender, and then he just plays a very intelligent ball in. And then Odegaard does Odegaard things. The thing I'll say, the best thing about that goal for me, though, was Ben White's cross. I mean, when you look at the amount of West Ham players that ball had to travel past between defence and goalkeeper before it reached Jesus. I mean, if that ball is literally 2 inches either side, it gets either snapped up by Fabianski or probably cleared for a corner or something by one of their, or maybe even a known goal, to be fair. But when I watched the replay of the cross, I just thought, wow, that is absolutely pinpoint. I mean, it's just makes Jesus, gives him the easiest job in the world, really, to knock that into the net. So brilliant. And obviously get that early goal.
And then get that early goal, the pressure's off, and then you're thinking, wow, this is best start possible, really. And then 3 minutes later, it gets even better. Great build-up play again. Martinelli sort of whipped the ball in from the sort of left-hand side over the top, and then Odegaard sort of ghosting it at the back and sweeps it in. I mean, it can't get better than that.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think Odegaard had his greatest game, but the technique, he times his run perfectly onto the ball, and the way he opens his body up as well. He kind of just jogs onto it, and all in one continuous stride, and then just perfect technique to kind of cushion the ball home almost. The thing I would say is that Aaron Cresswell at the far post just completely fell asleep. I mean, I don't know why he's literally just stopped tracking back, but it's still a hard technique, a dropping ball, far post, but again, just the technical security just to sweep that ball. And Martinelli, he had so much time. It was almost a little bit reminiscent of the goal at Anfield from Jesus with a header, where no one really closes Martinelli down. I mean, Martinelli's a decent crosser and corner taker at the best of times, but if you just give him that extra 5 yards in front of you so that he can lift his head up, and then obviously the combination of that and Cresswell punching through some sleep at the back post. I was always, when I saw the ball going to Odegaard, he's one of those players that you think, technical security for days. And like I say, didn't have his best game, but with 2-0 up inside the first 10 minutes, there's nothing really to say other than yes, this is going to be a nice confidence building victory. This is all that we could have. West Ham were, again, I think they were still trying to reorganise themselves after the first goal, and the crowd again were quiet. The West Ham players were like rabbits in headlights. They were just dropping off, leaving spaces all over the show. There was no bite to their play whatsoever. They were there. They were just sitting ducks. I mean, it really was just a case of. It was almost just a case of just walk through and just score at will. It felt that easy. That's why I think the final outcome of the game is so annoying. Because it looked that easy.
Yeah, I mean, when the goal went in, I was like, right, this is gonna be 5, 6, 7. But it's for me. And then after that, the game just sort of drifted. We just sort of there
Mm.
was no sort of penetration. There was no sort of creative spark. We just sort of played it safe. Pinged the ball around a little bit. The sort of shoehorn, if you like. Yeah, it just there didn't seem to be much urgency. We dropped
Mm.
down a few gears and just sort of went through the motions, sort of thinking the game would sort of be played out like that.
That was the
I mean,
theme of
how
the
did you?
game for me. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, sorry to cut in. I mean, that was the theme of the game for me. I mean, I'm still scratching my head. I don't understand. I understand the need to maybe not go too gun ho. Maybe get into, if we're being super negative, get into halftime 2-0 up and build again in the second half and nullify the first 10 minutes of the second half, and then you go and maybe get the third. I get that kind of. I get how maybe the team would want to break the game down in stages, not go too gun ho. But the big theme of the game for me is just how they immediately went from like fourth gear down to second gear for basically the entirety of the game. And
yeah,
it's bad enough doing it when you're 2-0 up, because you at the end of the day, at that point, you've got the goals. But to do it when you're at 2-2 as well and you're fighting for a title, and I know we're probably jumping ahead here, but to me, it didn't feel nerves for me. It almost reeked of a little bit of complacency, almost a bit of a
yeah.
maybe a subconscious kind of arrogance about the team. I don't think they're an arrogant side by any stretch of the imagination, but it reeked a little bit of like an arrogant. Oh, we've won this one now. And I get maybe we're not going to, play it for sixth gear the whole game and risk injury and manage the game in kind of chunks. But it blew my mind that we just, I mean, it was a theme after the game from Arteta. I just don't know why we did that. I mean, it's absolutely, it blew my
Do,
mind.
do you think?
I was,
Do you think that comes down to experience? Do you think because the players, do you think they're showing cracks? And is it experience because they've not been in this position before? What are your thoughts
it
on that? I
might,
mean,
it might be. I think the reason I'm kind of confused is because throughout the season so far, the players have basically played for 90 minutes, 96 minutes, and
yeah,
they haven't. Even though they are a young team of players, there's still a lot of international caps in there, a lot of minutes played at the highest level. So that's what I don't. I'm not even sure if I've got an answer for it, to be honest, because there's been games throughout the season. I look at Aston Villa away where we just did not give up. Well, we were in a bit of a basketball game there, but we carried on, and in the end, yes, fortuitous goal, but we got over the line. Maybe I just think maybe we just got a bit arrogant. I don't think we mentally bottled it. I know there's a lot of narrow, lazy journalism around about that, but I kind of think maybe it was an experience thing. Maybe because we've been relatively comfortable all season when we have got into a lead. We're thinking, maybe we underestimated West Ham, but West Ham just sort of turned the tables on us, really. And again, similar to last week, I just feel like we encouraged them, really. We gave their fans a reason to believe and their players a reason to believe. I mean, what do you think about it? Because I can't really. It's definitely not bottling it for me, and it might be linked to
no,
experience. But then the last two games, it feels like we've only played for sort of 20 minutes, half an hour a pop, and then the rest of it we've sort of ceased to do our thing.
yeah. I think we've just taken our eye off the ball and invited that pressure. So, like, if we think back to the Liverpool game, I think it was like we played for 35, 40 minutes and we were in complete control, and then we just offered that little bit of hope. And the similar thing happened in this game. We were in complete control, 2-0 up, cruising. But again, as we touched on before, not really offering much going forward after that. And then just sort of, if we move on to sort of West Ham's goal, I mean, it was just sloppy and a bit naive, really. And from one of our most experienced players, Partey in the middle of the field, just trying to sort of trying to do a sort of like tap over the head of Declan Rice, not Damien, of Declan Rice, our soon-to-be sort of Arsenal player, in my view. It was good sort of pressure from him, and then we just sort of were on the back foot instantly because the way the position in which he gave it away just left us completely vulnerable.
It's kind of bizarre because he's done that skill a few times before. He's tried to flick it over a player's head, and he's got such a languid kind of relaxed style anyway that when it doesn't come off, I think it looks particularly bad compared to what it would do from other players. But I agree, like the position on the pitch that he's doing it, and he's getting pressed by not Damien Rice, but his stepbrother Declan, and to do it kind of 10 yards outside your own box is just suicide, in my opinion. I mean, Declan Rice does well to kind of press him and kind of get up in his face and make himself big, but there's always going to be a pass on, even if you have to knock it back to the keeper or pop it back into the centre halves and then start to build from there. And it's just so, for me, it was symptomatic of just where we were in the game. We started to take our eye off. Yes, the goal gave them that kind of belief that they could come back into it, but we'd stopped playing with a bit of intensity by that stage anyway. And then that little sort of attempted flick over Rice's head, that was just symptomatic for me of that. And then obviously VAR not checking the handball. I did read somewhere that if Declan Rice had gone on and scored, having handballed it, VAR would have been able to check it, but I have heard that as a theory, but then it doesn't explain before this season how they've gone back 2 or 3 phases in play and picked out people who didn't end up scoring. So that to me feels a bit confusing, because at the end of the day, Declan Rice essentially has an assist of sorts, and for me it is maybe proximity is a bit of an issue, but I do not know why. I'd love to know why they didn't check that on VAR. It wasn't even up. It's a clear handball for me.
Inconsistencies again, isn't it, with VAR? I mean, the thing with it is that it's subjective, isn't it? It's again, you're looking at it from, although the technology's there, there's still a human at the other end, sort of deciding whether or not and interpreting it the way that they feel they should be, and that then naturally breeds uncertainty and inconsistency with decisions. What do you think of Gabriel's sort of half challenge? I mean, I looked at it and I thought, if you're going to commit. Don't sort of slide in and then sort of back out a little bit, because that's the impression I got. I thought, well, why don't you go in and then try and win the ball? If you're going to give the penalty away, I mean, it was a penalty. He did make contact. He did bring him down.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, the other thing is, why didn't he get booked then? Would that not have been a yellow card at least? I would have thought. I mean, I don't think he was the
again.
last
It's
man.
an inconsistency sometimes. Sorry, go on.
I just thought there was another man coming over, maybe not a red card, but surely a yellow card if he's brought him down like that, and a goal scoring opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean, it's another level of inconsistency. Sometimes you get the double jeopardy thing where they, because obviously if he doesn't make the challenge, he's probably got a tap in. But and then to be honest, I've stopped analysing the refereeing in this country, because it's just abject. But what I will say is that it's so interesting how football has changed from a defensive perspective, because now when you see any defender, for that matter, full back or centre half, going to ground, it's almost a bit of a strange sight now. Because what that tells me when a defender's going to ground is that they've not anticipated it quick enough, and they're almost compensating it for it by trying to make a last ditch tackle. Whereas the best defenders in the world, they come off the pitch looking pristine without much mud on them, because they're in the right place at the right time. They're reading the game. Yeah. I think that's where the skill, that's where the evolution of centre half play. Obviously playing out from the back's one that people talk about a lot, but I think the other one is actually defenders who, like Ben White's a classic example. The guy, he comes off the pitch, looking like he's just washed his clothes and walked out to the stadium with them. I mean, he's always anticipating in the right place. He just nips the ball off people's feet and then just plays. Whereas, let's be totally honest. Gabriel has been brilliant this season, but of the 2 first choice centre halves we have, I think Gabriel's the one that does have the odd rick in him. He's got a little bit of a lack of composure compared to Saliba, and probably even compared to Holding in a way. I mean, I know he tried to sort of disguise it by pulling both of his legs out to tackle, but it was clumsy. It was silly. But I guarantee if he'd seen that play unfolding even a few seconds before, he'd potentially be in a better position just to kind of place himself in front of the West Ham player to maybe get a block in or something like that. But it was desperate stuff, to be honest, and it was a penalty all day long. And then obviously Ben Rama coolly slotted it home.
Conviction. It was a good penalty. A lot of conviction. you looked at him, you thought, "Oh, this is going in." There was never a doubt really in my mind. I mean, yeah, I mean, for me. It all comes down to for Partey. He shouldn't put us in that position, and we've only really got ourselves to blame at that point. It was just
that's what makes it frustrating. Like if Ben
poor all
Rama takes
round.
the ball, or if Declan Rice dribbles past someone and fires it into the top corner, fair enough. You have to just say great goal. But the fact that we've been sloppy in possession, Gabriel's not read it. He's recklessly jumped in to the tackle. And again, it's the timing, isn't it? I mean, I know it's not right on the stroke of half time. It's 33 minutes or so, but
Yeah.
we're starting to see the finish line in terms of the end of the first half, and and I think for that last 10 minutes of the first half, we were under a lot of pressure. Like the crowd started amping up. West Ham started. It's mad. It's hard to know whether it was part of their pre-match sort of game plan to press, but they suddenly started pressing like crazy all over the pitch, and the crowd was sort of feeding off of that and whipping them up. And then, all the narrative on the coverage was, "Oh, is lightning going to strike twice?" But even I didn't sort of, I was annoyed about the half. I wanted half time to come because then I thought, well, okay, we'll come out, we'll be a different side second half. And whereas when you're at Anfield, you're not going to get a lot of chances. Against West Ham, I thought, I still fancied us in the second half to regroup, regather, and then still come out and find what we needed to into the second half. I was a lot more confident than I was against Liverpool. But yeah, we've just given them the opportunity, haven't we? We've just given them hope, given their fans hope, their players hope, and you've got to be an absolute ice cold killer when you're going for a title, particularly. When the top teams are winning titles, they smell blood when it's there. When the game's there for them to really drive home the advantage, they smell blood, they go for it, and they get that third goal. And similarly, when they are a bit under the cosh, I do think some of our defending's been a bit. Seeing how many good saves Ramsdale's made recently, maybe that's synonymous of Arsenal sort of gifting better chances to the opposition. I kind of feel like it is, because there were games early in the season where Ramsdale pretty much did nothing. And then it's just that point towards the end of the first half, the Arsenal players should have sort of read the room a bit, and even after they pulled the penalty back, be able to kind of like just take the sting out of it a bit more. They looked like they just lost a bit of composure, a little bit of control. But then half time comes, and it's probably a good thing for us. Second half just felt very different.
Yeah, I mean, leading up to half time, I think we looked very skittish. There was a lot of the ball pinging around, loose passing. I mean, Tierney, he did look really rusty, throughout the game. In fact, his passing was, it was really sort of ropey. I mean, he really looked like he hadn't played in a while, and it was quite surprising, to be honest with you. I mean, normally he's okay at passing. I mean, I know he's a bit of a, up and down the wing, lash the ball in sort of thing, but normally he's quite dependable. But there's some seriously loose passing. It wasn't great.
Tierney, I didn't expect any kind of real product from him in the final third necessarily, because he doesn't really have that kind of. But with all due respect to him, he's a bit more of a workman-like left back. But even in the first half, I think I counted sort of 4 or 5 really simple passes, even relatively short passes in field. He would have made those. But again, I think I do give him a little bit of leeway in the sense that he hasn't really played, and to come in. I know it's against West Ham as opposed to one of the really, really top sides, but it can't be easy just to be chucked straight into the team like that. But I assume he probably would have known a day or two before that he was going to probably play. And I did also notice that, I think you alluded to it at the beginning, he did I think Arteta was sort of getting him to try and play the Zinchenko sort of style of play, tucking in and becoming an auxiliary midfielder. But so I did notice him taking up some really funky positions that he hadn't. So it was good to see him try that.
He's not accustomed to it,
but not that he really did a lot. But it's good to see him trying to adapt his game and be open to this, the Arteta way of that left back position. But I just felt like he played some really dodgy passes that even in previous times when he was the first choice left back, he wouldn't have butchered. And it was a bit of a concern to see, to be honest with you. But I'm not going to put too much on him. I just think as a team, I think Saka was completely off it for the entire game. I think Odegaard was not really influential. I think when jumping ahead a bit, but when Trossard came on, he was so much more influential than Odegaard, even in that short spell. Yeah. I think even Jesus sort of lacked a little bit of spark. He works hard for the team. I mean, that's a given every game, but I think even he sort of lacked that little bit of fluency and spark. So, and then obviously Partey with too casual on the ball. Really it was pretty poor performances throughout the team. To us, I'm not going to labour the point on Tierney, to be honest. But but I'm still quite confident from a defensive perspective. We'd get some joy there. But then obviously we saw in the second half that that wasn't to be.
So let's get into the second half. Second half starts pretty much where it left off from the first half. But then we get a corner. Corner comes in, and then we get a handball decision, and a penalty is given. I mean, looking back at it, it was a penalty. His arm is extended. This is Michael Antonio, however you say his name.
You can call him Michael if you like.
Yeah,
I'll send him around to your house with a baseball bat.
Oh, okay, all right. So yeah, handball from him, and definite penalty for me. Referee points straight to the spot, and at that point I thought, okay, maybe this is like a get out of jail card for us. This is kind of what we need to sort of reset the nerves. And it's like you say, we're not playing Liverpool, so I think the chances, well, I hope the chances would have come regardless because of the opponent that we were playing. And I thought, this is we're going to do this. But then the ball goes to Saka, and I said this when we were watching it. I wasn't feeling confident that he was going to put this away. I just
explain that to me a bit more, because I felt the same too. But actually, when you look at the stats of who you'd want to be taking that penalty, I mean, Jesus has missed them in his career. Odegaard hasn't really taken it. There's no one really on the team who's been taking them. Saka's scored high pressure penalties. I'm thinking, against Liverpool, I nearly said Highbury, at the Emirates earlier in the season. I also felt that nervousness about Saka, even though the body of evidence suggests that he's been a very reliable penalty taker, and he's obviously had hardship before and come through it. So, I felt that too. I'm just interested to know what made you feel that way.
Just the look of the player. There's something. So whenever there's a penalty, I always look at the player and I try and suss them out with their eyes or the way that they're looking, because I think the team must have felt the nervousness, that sort of edginess to them, to know that they were under the cosh and they needed to sort of get this penalty to sort of re-establish that buffer, to sort of give them that sort of that safety net, if you like, because 2-1 is such an awful score. You're almost better off being 1-0 up rather than 2-1 up. So I looked at it and I just thought, I just don't fancy him. I just really didn't fancy him to put it away. And lo and behold, I mean, he didn't even hit the target. I mean, it was a bad miss. I mean, I know it happens to everybody. I think most players, apart from like maybe Ivan Toney,
he missed one the other week.
He missed one, he did. See, like he missed against, it happens to the best of them. But I think the problem is for us is that we really needed that penalty to go in. Otherwise, we were just really going to be on the back foot. And again, look, another compelling event that then whips up the crowd, because it's fine margins. You missed that penalty, and fast forward a few minutes, and boom, it's all.
You got to imagine as well, like that penalty miss from a West Ham fan and players' perspective that's like them scoring a goal. That gives them
absolutely.
That gives him that, them getting the penalty in the first half obviously did have them score a goal, but the equivalent of the impact that Saka miss has had is like them scoring a goal and breathing even more life into them. They'd sort of carried into the half-time break, although, everyone can miss goals, miss penalties rather, and, anyone that kind of gets online and slags Saka off and, does anything really untoward should have a word with himself as a penalty at the end of the day. And I think the club are very supportive. And we've got to remember, this guy's been carrying us for the last 2.5 to 3 years anyway, even with no experience around him. He's been the man. So, and from what happened with England in the Euros, I know that he's going to be fine. He's got a great sort of level head on him, and he'll come back for sure. But obviously it was a pretty abject penalty. But He'll come back. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, if he didn't do something on Friday night against Southampton.
Well, that's the hope. That's the hope. Yeah, and as you say, it whips the crowd up, and it's just sod's law that a few minutes later, it was like 2-3 minutes later, West Ham get their goal, their equaliser, and it was a pretty. I mean, I've looked back at it, and it was terrible defending. Bowen ghosting in at the back post from a. I mean, there was no sort of build-up play about it. It was just a hoofed up, lofted ball high into the sky that sort of fell kindly. And credit to Bowen, it was a good finish. It was it reminded me a little bit of Odegaard's finish from the first half, where he sort of swept it in, but we didn't seem to pick him up. And there were some half-hearted calls for offside, but it was never going to be given. And and then the ball goes in. I mean, we discussed it at the time. Do we think Ramsdale could have maybe done a little bit better about this? It seemed to sort of fall kindly for a goalkeeper to try and get a bit more on it than. Or would you think it just sort of happened a bit too quickly, or was it too much pace for the finish?
I mean, the mitigation for me that where maybe Ramsdale's not to blame so much is the fact that Bowen hits the ball into the ground, and I think sometimes when you do that, that seems to be a thing that sort of spooks goalkeepers out. Like you think about the Mesut Ozil chop shot and things like that, but I think when you watch the replay from behind the goal, he does seem to get enough of a hand on the ball for him to palm it around the post. But for me, it's too weak a hand. Like if he's a bit stronger in his wrist and his hand, I think he potentially, even if he pushes it back out into the box a bit and maybe there's a second shot or something like that. But I'd like to have been a bit more solid there. I mean, it was good technique by Bowen, to be fair. And the other bit I would also say as well, and I know this is a comment that's not going to mean anything even if people at the club could even hear it, but I think there's a lesson to be had there for Arsenal as well. Like West Ham have just done a straight ball into the channel, they've mixed it up, and they've gone direct, and it's paid dividends, and it's caught Arsenal off guard. And Gabriel's asleep. I don't know where Tierney is because Bowen's Tierney's man. And it's just a straight ball into the channel and bang, it's in the net. I mean, I will probably get to this anyway, but for me, there's a lesson to be had there, because there's times where you do need to just catch the defence a little. They've prepped all week for you to play a certain way, and yes, if you play your way to an extremely high standard, the other team shouldn't, in theory, be able to stop that anyway. But I'm all for a goal like that. If Arsenal got a goal like that, I'd be all for that. Just I'd love to see
goals a goal
every now and then. Just to not. We've got players that can play longer passes. I mean, Gabriel's a great passer. Xhaka can pass. Players that can play those kind of clipped balls, and we've got pace as well to get in behind. I think that's actually a part of Arsenal's game we don't use enough. You've got Martinelli's lightning quick, so's Jesus, so's Saka's no slouch either, and I think that's the thing that away from home, particularly when teams are playing a little bit higher up the pitch, it's something we don't really exploit, to be honest. And so there's a bit of a lesson in that there for me, I think. But for me, that was the game. I mean, you had Saka penalty miss, and 2 minutes later they're off up the other field and scoring. Well, we never really. I mean, to be fair, we hadn't even really shown up for the second half anyway. But again, there's a bit of me that thinks, right, there's still plenty of time here to. We've still got enough time to get a 3-2 win here. It will go down as a pretty grubby win, given how. But I thought there's time. But Arsenal seem to not really recover from that. The combination of Saka missing the penalty and Bowen scoring.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of the half, quite frankly, were quite poor. I thought West Ham they were winning the 50-50s. That there was no sort of, we didn't seem to have the fight in us. We didn't seem to have an answer to it. I mean, you alluded to it earlier, but a lot of players went missing. Partey. I mean, I've written down Jack as well. They were sort of anonymous. Tierney continued where he left off in the first half. Saka, I mean, I thought he was playing okay up until the penalty miss. I mean, I'm not sure how much that must have affected him afterwards, but he sort of went missing as well. And we just looked disjointed. We didn't have an answer. We were on the back foot, and the rest of the half just looked really sort of. We just looked really stodgy and laggy, and it wasn't really. There was no fluidity to it. We couldn't keep the ball. We weren't passing it very well. We couldn't string more than maybe 4 or 5 passes together before we were under pressure. And West Ham
we seem to go back to we seem to go back to an old way of playing where we just kind of got the ball and just lumped it back up the field to clear our lines, but then didn't win any duels or win any second balls. So then the ball just ends up coming back to you. And what we really needed, I think there was one little moment in the second half where we put about 15 or 20 passes together, and we didn't end up creating a chance from it. But I thought this is actually really good play by Arsenal, really moving the ball nicely around. But we just needed more of that, because I think if we weren't able to kind of build ourselves a platform to then go and find that winner. I mean, the only chance I can think of throughout the entire second half was Tierney flashing that cross across the face of the goal and Jesus sort of stretching for it. But other than that, I mean, Antonio, I thought Mikel Antonio had a brilliant second half. Particularly, he was an absolute. He was a menace, like his physicality and his pace, and he was holding all over the place. And he had that header that hit the frame of the goal. Yeah, but he's an absolute beast of a guy, and I think he's the wrong side of 30 now, but he's still got a bit about him, and Holding's no slouch on the physical side, but he had him on toast to be fair, and he obviously had that header that hit the frame of the goal. But we created nothing. Like I've seen Arsenal play before with chasing. I've seen Arsenal before where we've been chasing for a winner and the kitchen sink's being thrown at it, and you're watching the game and you're thinking, unless West Ham get very lucky here, a goal's in the post, it's imminent. But there was never any sense of a building of pressure by Arsenal in the second half that made me think, right, something's coming. We weren't winning corners, we weren't kind of getting the ball high up the pitch and just make it, like, just playing a little bit of chaos ball at the end. I mean, at the end of the day, a point to us, I don't want to sound negative, a point's a point, but the difference between a point and a defeat is only 1 point. But let's go for that win. I mean, I that was the thing that most confusing for me, is that it didn't really look like they were almost even trying to inject a little bit of urgency and a bit of something about them at the end, because we've got something to go for, and it didn't come across like that watching it.
What it looked like to me was that we didn't really have a plan B or a plan C. There was no sort of cutting edge. We didn't really know how else to play. I mean, and this is something that we've touched on over the last couple of weeks or so, is that we're just sort of playing it safe. The goals go in. We're clinical when we get the opportunities, but I don't think we're creating enough sort of half opportunities and sort of clear cut opportunities. And then when we're under the cosh, like we were against West Ham, I don't think that we're able to have an answer for it. There's no sort of, you said how West Ham sort of did that lofted ball. Why can't we? Why does it always have to be beautiful football? If you're under pressure like that, then it's acceptable in my view to switch it up a little bit. Go a bit long. Use the pace that you've got out wide. Saka and Martinelli cutting in. Look for some over the top through balls through the channels. It can pay dividends. It can give you that little bit of breathing space, so you're not under pressure. Use it. And I just think that it just didn't click for whatever reason. And I think a little bit of that, maybe not so much with the Liverpool game, but again with that a little bit, it was just disappointing, really. I mean, the subs as well. Arteta's got this habit of making late subs. I mean, I know he brought Jorginho on. I mean, first of all, I think he made some strange subs. He took Gabriel Jesus off and brought Jorginho and Trossard on, and who else came on with Jorginho? I can't remember exactly who it was.
Partey came off. Yeah, Partey came off for Jorginho. Did Tierney came off? Didn't he? I think Tierney might have come off for Vieira or something like that. I was really shocked to see. I mean, Partey, he's on a booking. He's on a booking already, and you can kind of maybe see that. But Jesus also was on a booking. But you need
the goal threat. You need the goal.
Yeah, I'd like to have Jesus and Trossard on the pitch. Tell Jesus to stop tracking back and winning the ball deeper, and tell him just to play on the last man and get Trossard in there trying to find him, because he's And the other thing for me is I feel like such an entitled person saying this, but I do think we just try and walk the ball in so much. I mean, I'm trying to find some stats actually while we're on this, but I can't seem to find them. But I'd love to know some stats around sort of how many long range shots we're taking compared to the other teams, because I can remember a few goals happening this season. Obviously, the Reece Nelson one, Partey scored a couple of bangers. But I don't really recall Fabianski having to really make any. I don't think he may have to make a single save in the second half. And when you're chasing the target, you're 2-1, so you're 2-2 with a team struggling at the wrong end of the league. It's just not good enough. Like, you just got to create a little bit of chaos. I mean, do we want to talk about Smith Rowe? I mean, I did notice there was a period in the second half where he wasn't even warming up with like 15 to 20 minutes to go. And I'm looking at it going, like, when you look stylistically at the kind of players we've got, Smith Rowe offers something different. The ability to carry the ball at pace between the lines and direct running football, which kind of gets defenders on the back foot. And for him to, I don't know what's. I mean, I know he's had his surgery. But he's mechanically fit now, and I understand loosely maybe why. Yeah, if we're 2-2 at Anfield, well, maybe you don't or whatever because it's Anfield. But 2-2 against West Ham away, I'm looking at it going, I don't know. Yeah, it just sort of confused me why we're not bringing someone like Smith Rowe as one of our top goal scorers last season. He's got an ability to run and get defenders backpedaling towards his goal, get you higher up the pitch, get you territory, get you playing aggressive, direct football. And for me, that's what that's a plan B kind of player to have, and we just didn't use him for whatever reason. Staggering.
I agree. I think he would have been a better player to bring on in this particular game rather than Vieira, because I think Smith Rowe's got a bit more about him physically. You can't see Fabio Vieira winning any sort of physical duels against any of the West Ham players. I just couldn't see it, and I just thought, well, evidence was there. He was completely anonymous, Vieira, when he came on, and I just think that, why not give Smith Rowe an opportunity? He's been there, sat on the bench for months now, barely getting any sort of minutes under his belt. And, as you say, one of the best top scorers for us last season. Why not give him the chance? It just, do you think he's just fallen out for he didn't trust him? I mean, what's the reasoning behind this? It's like, he must be playing, I don't know, maybe he's getting some runouts for some reserves or something, but he's got to be not completely match fit, but if he's on the bench, he's there to be used,
Well, he's medically fit. We know that, and we know that he won't be as sharp as what he would be, obviously, but he's medically fit, and he's in training week in, week out. And the whole thing about the manager not trusting him, I mean, I don't buy that either, because last season he trusted him a lot, and I remember there was a time when Martinelli couldn't even get off the bench a year and a half or so ago under Arteta, and people saying, does Arteta trust Martinelli? And it's evident that he does now. So for me, unless there's been some kind of disciplinary issue, which I can't really see that, to be honest, but it just baffles me. I always look at him and think, okay, I'm not expecting Smith Rowe to start, but if you look at some games there were games last season where I'm sure he didn't like this role, but he kind of came on as a bit of a finisher off the bench, and I remember it was a game against, I think it was West Ham at the Emirates last season. I think we won 3-1 in the end, and he came off the bench and he sealed the deal with the third goal. And he came off the bench a lot last season and was actually very, very effective in terms of scoring goals.
It's a bit bemusing as to why he's not being given the opportunity at the moment. I mean, maybe he doesn't want to sort of mix it up too much, given the sort of the delicate nature of where we are at right now. But what have you got to lose at that point? What's the difference between I think I would have preferred to see him over Vieira. So obviously 2-2 final score. How were you feeling afterwards? I mean, I kind of know, but dejected, disappointed, frustrated. I guess all of those above.
Yeah, to be honest, I try and keep this clean, but I felt shell shocked, to be honest. It's one of those few, because again, with Liverpool away, you can kind of square that off a bit in your mind and go, well, City lost there, United lost there, we got a point. When it all comes out in the wash at the season, maybe it might look like a decent point to a degree, but West Ham, there was we gave them encouragement to come back into that game. And not only that, when they were back into it, we had nothing in the tank to then go. So I was confused, because to be honest with you, this season we've shown a propensity to fight back in games and play to the end and
you think the Bournemouth
things like
game,
that.
the Villa game, yeah.
Yeah, and even Fulham at the start of the season, I think we scored a goal with about 86, 87 minutes on the clock. So we're a team that fights to the end. So I was like, it was the first time I've been a bit shell shocked around sort of, well, where is the fight? Particularly given where we are in the league. And given it didn't look like bottling to me, just like we just didn't have it in the tank to do it, which is, I was just so confused. But then weirdly, quite quickly after the game, I started, and this is where I've got this kind of hope, is I started looking at the stats again, and I realised that nothing had actually changed by the same token, other than maybe confidence being lost by the players a bit. Because if we still draw against City and win our other games, which again is a big ask given how we went out on the weekend, but that still, so nothing changes in terms of the title race. We still, in my view, we still have to go to City and get a result. And then actually, what I am trying to come around to this idea is, I want the Arsenal players to look at this West Ham game and give them a bit of a kick in the backside, because if we cruised into the City game with 6 points in the bag from those 2 matches, and maybe we might, go in a little bit complacent, or we're a great side, but it feels now that it's sink or swim time for us a little bit, because I'm hoping that little kick in the backside.
I was going to ask you, where do you think this leaves us now? I mean, before we get on to that, I wanted just to quickly ask you, how much of the defensive frailties I think that we've shown recently is down to the fact that Saliba is out at the moment? What do we reckon? Do you think that's playing a big part? I mean, I know Holding's okay and he's done all right, but he's not the same player. I think that partnership between Gabriel and Saliba has been, I mean, you touched on earlier, Gabriel is the one that's got a bit more of a clangor in him when you compare the partnership. But I think Saliba offers so much assured possession, and he's really cool and collected. And then you put Holding and Gabriel alongside each other. I look at that and I feel a bit nervous just looking at that pairing. How much do you think we're missing Saliba right now, given what's happened of late?
Do you know what? I mean, I'll start by saying that I really want Saliba back, because I think that's obvious. You want your best players on the pitch. But I personally think a lot of Arsenal fans are still a bit tortured from the North London derby away last season, where Rob Holding had an absolute brain fade for the first half. To be honest, if you look at actually his body of evidence since he's been at the club, he's been a very dependable player. I mean, if I was Gabriel, I'd probably be nervous. I'd probably think, I want my old mate next to me, and same with the players around him. But when you actually look at what, Gabriel was the one that screwed up for the penalty, not Holding. Imagine if Holding had done that, we'd all be losing our heads. But yeah, my short answer is I would love to have Saliba back, but I don't think Holding's been. And plus, we should be able to play players like Holding away against West Ham and it not negatively impact the result. I mean, there was a lot more Arsenal players played badly on Saturday. That was it Saturday? It was Saturday. Was it? No, it was Sunday. Sunday. Yeah, there are a lot of other Arsenal players that can probably point to themselves rather than look at Holding. I mean, Saka was completely anonymous. Odegaard, Partey was, trying to stuff around in the midfield. For me, Holding's not that guy on this occasion. But yeah, like I say, you always want your top players back on the field. But I actually think Holding's been fine, to be honest. And against West Ham, you'd love to have Saliba back against City, obviously, but against West Ham away, Holding should be more than serviceable. I mean, he scored at the London Stadium last season when we beat them, and I was happy enough with Holding in this team, same as I was with Tierney, to be honest, because I thought, well, it's West Ham away. Those are still decent players who should be able to drag you through against West Ham. Whereas obviously against City, you'd love to have Saliba and Zinchenko back. So no, I don't think it's been that big a thing. I mean, and you could also say, are we pressing as well as we did with Martinelli and Jesus? I mean, that's that old trope about defending as a team. I think our pressing game is not really there at the moment, and I think when you stop, because there was sort of like a period about 4 or 5 games ago where I noticed we'd lose the ball and within 5-10 seconds we've won it again, and we've won it in the kind of the Odegaard position, and we're from that we're then creating a chance off the back of it. Whereas we're not really winning the ball high enough up the pitch for me, and that's then having that ripple effect where it puts stress on the midfield, it puts stress on the defence, and then obviously
defense, yeah.
You know, I don't think Holding. I think Holding is very serviceable for a game like this. Put it that way. But I'd love to have Saliba back if we can get him. What's your take on the Rob Holding piece?
I just think that Saliba gives us that opportunity to be more calm in possession at the back. I think he's able to play out from the on the ground on the deck a lot more than sort of Holding. Holding reminds me a bit more of that sort of old school sort of defender. I mean, Holding's style of play is probably more akin to Gabriel, whereas Saliba is that sort of, he's the passer. He's the one that can really play out from the back. And I just think he's a bit more cool and a bit more calm. And I think he sort of, I think that has a ripple effect on the rest of the defense. And obviously, we have no choice because obviously Tomiyasu's out, and so Ben White has to stay at right back. So you can't you can't change it around. You haven't really got many other options. So I think we're missing him. I mean, I saw today on social media that I think Saliba's now back in training. He was on an exercise bike. There's a video posted by El Neni. So fingers crossed. I mean, that he's back. I mean, whether he gets, I don't know, maybe he gets 10, 15 minutes at the end of the Southampton game just to sort of test him out to see what he's like. But Rob Holding against Haaland, I'm not too keen.
You know what though? Holding did all right against Haaland in the cup.
I know.
Haaland didn't really. I've clearly just joined the Rob Holding fan club. Like me and his family are basically the only members. But I don't. I actually was quite impressed actually how well Holding shackled him in that game, to be honest. But obviously he's an absolute. Well, he literally is a machine, literally. So it's not to say that he's not going to not have a field day, but I mean, let's test your mettle on this one then. Let's say that Saliba isn't fit enough to play against Southampton, but maybe say the day of Southampton, he starts to actually do some work on the pitch with the ball, and then in the for a day or two maybe he trains out on the pitches with the guys, so he's kind of ready. Would you throw him into a game like that with literally no football for a month or so?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I think he gives us that extra sort of. There's a bit more of a dimension to the defence than if you put him in there. Whereas with Holding, what you see is what you get, which is the best hair transplant ever, and and a defender that is that does defending. I don't see him as he's a bit one-dimensional, and I just don't see that extra bit that Saliba has. So I would absolutely, if he's fit enough to play, then you play him. I mean, you think back to last season, we didn't have much of a choice with some of the defenders that we had. You think back to the Newcastle game, like when Ben White was he was half fit and we had to play him. And it was such a crucial game for us. And I think you play your best players. If they're fit or they're 85% fit, 90%, then you've got to play them. You've got to play them.
But you know what, though? I mean, would you not say St James's Park was almost a bit of a lesson to not do that? Because, I mean, we were down to the bare bones a bit as it was, but for me, we had too many players that we were trying to patch up to put out on the pitch. And, I mean, let's be honest, if Saliba does miraculously show up in the City game, he's not going to be at the level he was a few months back. He's not going to have that
I know.
Momentum and stuff.
Worst things, Worst case scenario, he comes off and Holding goes on. I mean, I just think I would rather our better players to be on the pitch. That game is, I mean, we're going on to sort of where this leaves us right now, but that game is it's taken on a new dynamic now. It's so pivotal and crucial. The whole season, in my eyes, comes down to this game and that game. I'm expecting us to sort of to have a reaction to where we've been over the last couple of weeks, and I expect us to sort of steamroll Southampton. I do. I think it'll be like 4-0 or something. I mean, they are at the foot of the table. They are going down, and I can't see anything. I can't see past an Arsenal win for us on that one. But so for me, the season comes down to that game at the Etihad, and we just. I don't think we need, I don't think we have to win. I just think we just have to avoid defeat, which is a dangerous game. But
Yeah, I think that's very dangerous, isn't it? I
well,
almost rather us
I don't
go
think we
and
can.
play like they've got to win.
Yeah, no, we cannot under any circumstances go into that game thinking, oh, we only need a point. We have to go there to try and win, and the worst that can happen is that we come away with a point, because then it's everything is as it is, and it's still within our, if you like, in our hands.
Well, let's get your thoughts then, like in terms of where this leaves, like how you felt at full time and where you think this. What's your sort of gut telling you? How are you feeling about the title running at this point, given what's happened?
I mean, I'm genuinely gutted. I mean, I really, I thought we were going to win at Anfield. I genuinely thought we were going to win at Anfield. I really thought we were going to win this game away at West Ham. And I thought we would, at worst, pick up 4 points from these games, and we'd be in a better position than we are now. As it turns out, City being in imperious form that they are, I mean, they're steamrolling everybody. Yeah, I mean, there's the difference for you. City played on Saturday. They were 3-0 up at halftime. Game was finished. They steamrolled Leicester 3-0 halftime, done. Second half starts, Leicester, a little bit of fight, come back with a goal, but the game's done by halftime. We go 2-0 up at West Ham, and then we leave the door slightly ajar for them.
Yeah.
They get their goal, and then all of a sudden, the game is a completely different game. That's the difference. And it's these fine margins, I think, that are making the difference right now. And I think part of it comes down to experience. I think the players maybe are feeling a little bit of the pressure. Naturally, they would be. We haven't won a league title in 19 years or whatever. It's.
Well, this is the question I've got for you. Do you think players in the modern day players feel the pressure of what happened before they were even born in some cases? Because I don't. I admit some might be feeling some pressure, but then there's probably a personality type within our squad on some players who are excited by it. I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is not fighting for the title and hoping you're going to scrape into the Conference League, into something like that. Like,
okay,
I personally would imagine there'd be players in the squad that would be actually excited that they're in this position and I'm really determined to do it. I mean, the 19 years thing to me is a fact, obviously, but I don't even think there was probably one or two of our players who were basically like a year old by that point. I mean, I don't really see that for me. And they're not playing as if they're under pressure. I think they're just too casual in my view. Like we need to do what we did a few weeks ago at Fulham when we went in 3-0 at half time and just killed it. And then we were 2-0 up against Everton at half time at the Emirates. And then we came out and put the other goals in to win 4-0. We need to play. You can't. I mean, the Premier League, like West Ham away, this game taught me exactly what we know about the Premier League, that nothing gets given for free. I mean, West Ham probably won't go down, to be honest. I mean, they do have good players and there are worse teams than them there. Obviously, they're down there, but West Ham might have looked at it and gone, oh, we've got the Conference League next week. That's our priority. But even they played on Thursday night. They gave us a physical battering in that second half. They didn't care what Arsenal wanted to do. They just wanted to go and do, be them and put a good account of themselves in front of their fans. And obviously we encouraged them, but it was just another example of how there's no, I mean, I think a lot of Arsenal fans already are probably underestimating the Southampton game. I mean, obviously we're going to be favourites, but all they need to do is play that horrible low block football that we saw earlier in the season that we couldn't break down at the time. And you never know, a James Ward-Prowse free kick and suddenly the pitchforks are out. So I think we still got to go into the Southampton game and just be better at what we're doing. Because if we can do that, we will beat them. I don't want us to kind of think. I don't want us to. It'll be easy in this situation actually to look just that few days ahead to the City game and think, right, we've got to get those 3 points. It's all over if we don't win against Southampton, in my view. Even if it's a 1-0 win, we've got to win there. Otherwise, forget about it. We wouldn't deserve to win at that point.
Yeah,
I can't beat the bottom of the table team at home.
If we don't get maximum points against Southampton, then I think I think the City game is irrelevant then, because I think then the players will just be like, oh, this is just, it's too much. Then it's not. We're not in control of our own destiny. I do though fully expect us to have a reaction to this. I think the last couple of weeks has probably taught us a lesson as a group that we need to sort of finish off, and we can't be complacent, and give opportunities that little bit of a, give them that little hint of a chance. We have to put them away. But I do think we're going to, roll over Southampton. I think them being bottom of the table, they've only really got James Ward-Prowse, which is set piece specialist. I can't see any threat from anywhere else from that, and then I think it's all down to the City game then after that.
Yeah, we certainly got to do our job. I think.
Yeah,
and start thinking. We've still got to be thinking about what do we need to do, and we've got to execute, and we've got to.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Arsenal tapering off in the second half again. That's 2 games in a row where we've just not been at it, and it's not good enough.
Yeah.
We won't deserve a title.
Yeah.
With City, when you're up against City as well, compared to the years gone by, that you have to basically almost achieve perfection, to get a title at their expense. So, it's unthinkable for me to, that we drop points against Southampton.
Yeah, absolutely. So, on that thought, then, time for bold predictions, I guess.
Yeah. So, shall we reviewing last week? We both screwed up.
I'm down again,
frankly. You're good at this, aren't you? No. So I predicted we would win by 2 clear goals against West Ham. We didn't. And you predicted the score of a 2-0 win against West Ham, which obviously we didn't. So that's us both donating to charity at the end of the season.
Sure.
Let's start with your prediction for Southampton.
I'm going to go really bold on this one. I'm going to go 4-0.
So you're predicting the score?
4-0.
Nice.
I think there's going to be a reaction. I think Mikel will not so much get into them, but I think he's just going to sort of re-emphasize the fact that we need to just, if we're going to play like that, like we did in the first, I say 40 minutes at Liverpool, half hour like we did at West Ham, it's got to be a complete game. You can't. There are no gimmies in this league. We have to. If we've got a plan, we've got to execute it. And I just don't think Southampton will have any. I just can't see it. I can't see past an Arsenal win, especially what's happened. If we'd won against Liverpool and won against West Ham, maybe we could have been a bit complacent against Southampton. But I can't see it. I think the players will know that there's too much on the line now, and they have to pull out the performance.
Yeah, this is really this kind of, even though nothing's going to be decided on Friday, this does feel a bit like last chance saloon the next sort of 5 or 6 days, doesn't it? Like, it really does feel that way. So I mean, my prediction, I'm going to back our star boy after his penalty miss, and I'm going to say that Saka's going to score and make a resounding sort of return to form against Southampton. But I'm backing him to score. Sure. I wouldn't be surprised if he scored 2 or assisted 1 and scored 1. But I'm going to be
sure.
He's displayed such a level of consistency for us over the last few years that it would be absolutely be mental if he didn't deliver something like even a 7 out of 10 and potentially a goal for me, because he's been that consistent. So that's what I'm going to go with for the week.
Okay, controversial point though. Do you think he'll actually play? Because Trossard, I think he's been unlucky to be out of the side, and Saka was a bit off form slightly with the Liverpool game as well. Is there an argument to be had that he plays?
There's probably an argument,
harsh, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to know my opinion, which you obviously do because you asked the question, like, should he potentially be dropped? I think yes, but I don't think he will, because I think there's too much at stake. I think Arsenal can play Friday and then Wednesday, no problem. And let's be honest, Arteta doesn't even rest Saka when we're playing, at home in the Europa League against a pub side from somewhere on the continent. So he's not going to rest him, because he never does. But yeah, if you ask me, if I was a manager, would I have potentially had him on the bench for a game? Yes, I probably would have by this stage, to be honest, because I don't believe in any passengers, and And also, it can benefit a player. It can just give them that little kick they needed. I mean, we saw a few games ago, Martinelli was dropped for Trossard. And then Martinelli's now pretty much our most effective player at the moment in terms of goals and assists and things like that. So I think you just give them a little bit of a kick, give them a bit of a rest, but also a little psychological rest and make them come back to form. So if I was the manager, I probably would have started with Saka on the bench in probably maybe not at Anfield, but maybe against West Ham. But I don't think he will rest him. I think it's just too much. The games are relatively spread out, and I think he is basically our most consistent player over the last 2 or 3 years, and he's got that ability to to light a game up. So I think he'll definitely play, and I'm backing him to repay the manager's faith with at least a goal on Friday night.
Stuff. I think that just about wraps it up, doesn't it? Yeah, for this week.
I think so. I think the quicker we stop talking about this bloody game and start digging into the next ones, I think I want to move on with my life, to be honest, at this point.
Yeah. Cool. Well, look, thanks everybody for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and Paul and I will see you on the next one.
Bye, everyone.
See you later. Bye. Bye.
Bye.